Everybody, it's been a while. It's been a month since I last did a video. Ow, ow, ow. Sorry. My ankle is acting up, so I was trying to keep it up, but it was hurting too much, so I put it down. So, I'll get right into it. I'll read you all chapter 6, and then if there's anything I want to say at the end, I will do that rather than bore you guys before I start reading. So, picking up where I left off, chapter 6, from Immortal Love by Lynnsey Carrigan, aka me. And if I make sounds like that, I'm moving around and my ankle's being a bastard, so. Okay. Genevieve was on cloud 9 the next day. Her date with Lucian had gone very well. She spent much of the morning and early afternoon talking on the phone. I'm sorry, guys. Freaking. I'm a rusted up box of toys. She talked to Kristen, Sherry, and Eliza. They were her best friends from childhood. She chatted with her sisters Henrietta and Isis. Her mother was the last person who called her. Hello? Hey, Jenny, a cheerful voice greeted her. It's Mom. She smiled. Hey, Mom, how are you? I'm doing well, she replied. So, I hear you had your first date in 6 years. Why? How did I put 6 years? You're supposed to be... Oh, crap, that I missed. It's supposed to be 2 years. I don't know why the hell I put 6 years. Oh, well. How did it go? Very well, she replied. She had a feeling this conversation was going to be the same as all the others, since everyone else had wanted to know how her date had gone last night. What did you two do? Went to a drive-in. Ah, that's nice, her mother remarked. What did you see? Abandoned Love. That's not a real movie, by the way. I made it up. I think. There's no Abandoned Loves, right? Well, when I read it, it wasn't real, so maybe there's been one made since then? Ah, I heard about that one, her mom remarked. It's a great movie, Genevieve told her. You should go see it with Dad. He might like it. Oh, your father wouldn't want to see that, her mom said dryly. Your father is a Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings type of man. Well, but seeing it with Liz. Liz was her mother's best friend. She might like it, her mother agreed. She's been down in the dumps since her husband died a few months ago. That was one thing Genevieve and her mom's best friend had in common. They were both widows. Genevieve would call Liz once every 2 weeks to talk to her about how she was managing her husband's death. Liz had been thankful that Genevieve gave her an opportunity to rant, cry, ask questions about the grieving process of losing a husband, and just talk. So, are you going to see him again? Her mother asked her curiously. I would love to. What's his name? Lucian Black. He sounds very mysterious. She thought about that for a bit. He is. You like mysterious guys, don't you? Ooh, no, I read that wrong. You like mysterious guys, don't you? Much better. Yeah, although you can say Chris wasn't that mysterious. Some of the cases he did were. Her mother remarked. True. So how old is he? 35. My age now. You definitely like your men older, don't you? Yep. So where did you meet him from? That would have been better to say where did you meet him at, but well, okay. My job, she replied. He's a bouncer at Maddie's on Friday and Saturday nights. What does he look like? Oh, God, that damn word again. The same one I struggled last week. He's the epitome of tall, dark, and handsome. I know I said it well that time, yeah. She replied dreamily. He's between 6'2" and 6'4". He has beautiful, fabulous blue eyes. He has medium-length hair that's black as a raven's wing, with trimmed sideburns. He's built like an athlete. He's just hot enough to be a model in GQ. By the way, when I wrote this novel, I had Gerard Butler to play Lucian. So, when you're reading this book and you're having a hard time trying to picture Lucian, just think of Gerard Butler, okay? You know, the guy from 300, Phantom of the Opera? That dude. I just realized that I repeated something twice. And I didn't catch it. Okay, this is gonna sound like a record player, apparently. What does he do for a living? He's a bouncer at Maddie's. He's a full-time bouncer at Maddie's? No, he just works on Fridays and Saturdays. That's it? Her mother asked incredulously. Yes. He doesn't work any other job? Well, from what I heard at work, he doesn't need to work another job. He apparently has a lot of money. So, if he has a lot of money, why does he work as a bouncer? Genevieve shrugged her shoulders, even though she knew her mom wouldn't see the gesture. Beats me. Our co-workers think he does it for fun or as a power trip. That's interesting, Madeline remarked dryly, though she made sure to cover the dryness of her tone so Genevieve wouldn't get mad at her. So, has he been married before? Yes, but he's a widower. How did she die? I think he said she died from pneumonia. Oh, that's very sad, her mother said sincerely. Did he have any children? Jenny rolled her eyes a bit. Her mother did this with her every time she went on her first date, even in high school. He had 2 children. Had? Her mother said skeptically. What happened to them? They died too. That's very tragic. I know, she remarked. It's hard enough to lose 1 child. I can't imagine losing 2. Well, dear, I got to go, her mother said to her. I have to train one of the employees on the register. Talk to you later, sweetie. Bye, Mom. Bye, baby. Genevieve looked at the clock. It was 1 p.m. It was time to go swimming. She put on her swimsuit, a pair of jeans, a black short-sleeve shirt, socks, a black tennis shoes. Okay. She gathered her towel, shampoo, conditioner, comb, deodorant, and plastic bag. She put those items into her backpack, which she always took with her to the swimming pool. Normally she swam 24 laps. However, today she felt like doing 30. She did 6 laps each of freestyle, breaststroke, and backstroke. She did 2 laps each of butterfly, front crawl, side crawl, doggy paddle, froggy, which was technically doing breaststroke without going underwater, and jelly, which was technically doing breaststroke on your back where the legs just did the same motion as one would do if they were doing breaststroke. After she swam 30 laps, she relaxed in the hot tub. She left the bathhouse around 3 o'clock. Her stomach growled as she hadn't had anything to eat all day. She debated between stopping by Taco Bell again or making a salad at the salad bar they had at the store. She decided to have salad. She drove to the store and made her salad. She got home and ate her lunch. She cleaned up her mess and decided to take a nap. The phone rang around 5:30. Hello? Hi, Jen. It's me, Lucian. She smiled. Hi, Lucian, she said happily. How are you doing? Fine, thanks, he replied. How are you? Doing all right. That's great to hear, my dear, he remarked. Would you like to go out this evening? Sure. Okay, where would you like to go? She thought for a moment. She was in the mood for soup tonight. Usually most people wouldn't consider having soup in the beginning of May since the humidity started to get bad in Maryland. However, she loved to eat soup no matter what time of year it was. We can go to the Soup Queen, she replied. That's not too far from Maddie's. We can also go to Java for You, which is on the other side of the bay. My mom and my sister Isis own that business. They sell coffee, tea, smoothies, soups, and sandwiches. Are your mom and sister working tonight? My mom is, she replied. My sister isn't. She had to take her daughters to the dance rehearsal tonight. She smiled a bit. My nieces Jessica and Miranda are following in my footsteps. When is her recital? It's on Friday. I can't go, he said glumly. I have work. That's okay, dear. So, do you want to go to the Soup Queen or Java for you? She thought about that for a while. She was in the mood for cream of crab soup tonight, and both places made great cream of crab soup. Yet her mom made the best. Lucian wouldn't have to pay anything since her mom would let them eat for free. We'll go to Java for you, she replied. She finally replied. Okay, I'll see you at 7, he said, and hung up. Java for you was a half-hour away in another small town called Chesterville, which wasn't far from Annapolis, where most of her family lived. By the way, just to point out, as far as I know, there's no Chesterville, Maryland. There's a Chestertown, but there's no Chesterville as far as I'm concerned, okay? Just putting it out there. Where did I leave off at? Okay. Madeline had chosen Chesterville as a place to establish a cafe since it was next to Route 50, where there was a heavy flow of travelers. It wasn't that Annapolis didn't have a heavy flow of travelers, let alone tourists. However, there was more competition for business in Annapolis than in a small town like Chesterville. Lucian had picked Genevieve up from her house at 7:30. Supposed to be 7. Oh well. They got to her mother's and sister's cafe by 8 p.m. The coffee shop was in an old lighthouse keeper's house that overlooked the Chesapeake Bay. The lighthouse itself had burned down 50 years ago, though the foundation still remained till this day. The cafe wasn't that far from Route 50 since they could hear cars traveling on the Bay Bridge that connected the eastern shore to the western banks of Maryland. It was supposed to be western shores of Chesapeake, but okay. Yeah, I noticed myself that I repeat a lot. I'm really sorry about that for people who actually read the book and noticed that. I apologize. Let's see. The cafe had a friendly atmosphere where it was softly lit. There was one section that had tables and chairs big enough for 4 people, so people could dine there. Another section had smaller tables and chairs that were big enough for people to eat a quiet lunch or conduct business on their laptops, since the cafe had internet. There were also sofa chairs in that same section for people to relax while they enjoyed their hot beverages. Across from the register were shelves stocked with bags of coffee for customers to take home. There were also bottles of flavored syrups from vanilla to hazelnut. For people who didn't like coffee, there were boxes of tea that were flavored with mint to chai. The dessert case displayed cookies, brownies, Rice Krispie treats, slices of various cakes, and scones. The refrigerated case below the dessert case had various types of sandwiches, small veggie platters, plastic bowls filled with fresh fruit, bottles of water, boxes of milk, and juices. The cafe wasn't busy tonight. It didn't surprise Genevieve, though. It was downtime for the employees at this time. Most people didn't want to drink coffee this late in the day because the caffeine could keep them up late. Besides, the cafe would close in an hour anyway. She didn't see her mom at the register or the espresso machine. "Is my mom in the back?" she asked the cashier. "Yep," the cashier responded. Genevieve took Lucian's hand and led him to the back. Madeline Avery sat at the desk in the back, looking intently at some paperwork. Lucian was shocked at how young her mother looked. From what he gathered from Genevieve's mind, her mother was going to be 60 next year. However, she looked to be in her late 40s. He figured out where Genevieve got her youthful looks from. Madeline had short, curly brown hair that was beginning to turn gray in some areas. She had beautiful blue eyes like her daughter did. She had a good figure and a posture for a woman of her age. He figured that she was petite like her daughter was, but he couldn't tell how tall she was yet. "Hey, Mom." Madeline looked up from the paperwork. Well, they both realized were applications. She smiled at the sight of seeing her youngest child. "Genevieve," she said happily as she got out of her chair and walked over to give her daughter a big hug. "How's my baby girl doing?" "I'm doing well," she replied as she hugged her mom back. "Who's this?" Madeline asked curiously. indicating Lucian. Mom, this is Lucian Black. Her mom's eyes bugged out in amazement. Genevieve could tell her mom found her date very attractive. Nice to meet you, Mr. Black. The pleasure's all mine, Lucian said as he kissed Madeline's hand. Please call me Lucian, Mrs. Avery. Only if you call me Madeline, she said giddily. Genevieve raised an eyebrow. Was her mother flirting with her date? She shook her head. She knew her mom loved her father, even though there were times where she got the impression that her mother wanted to kick her father in the shins. So what are you kids doing tonight? Her mother inquired. We were actually thinking about eating here for dinner, Genevieve replied. I'm craving your cream of crab soup. Cream of crab soup. Cream of crab soup. Your cream of crab soup. Didn't I just say that wrong? Do you want a roll of cornbread with that? Cornbread. What about you, Lucian? Her mother asked curiously. Oh, I'm fine, he replied casually. I'm not really hungry. Do you have any red wine? Both Genevieve and Madeline raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, Madeline remarked. We don't sell wine. I'll have coffee then. I'll get your order. Her mom said as she turned around to the cashier to put the order in. Turn around to the cashier. Okay, gotcha. Genevieve and Lucian sat at the table in the corner. You're not hungry? Genevieve asked him curiously. No, I had a big lunch. Oh, okay, she said as her mother brought them their drinks. You sure you don't want anything to eat, Lucian? Her mom asked. No thanks, he said politely. As I told your daughter, I had a big lunch earlier. Okay, let me know if you want anything else, her mom said as she walked off. Will do, Genevieve said after her. So, you go back to your regular schedule this week? Yeah. I'll miss you. She blushed. I'll miss you, too. Is there any way you could start working at night? He asked curiously, so I can see you more. She sighed. One reason why I want to work during the day is that I would like to start teaching dance again at night. I miss it. Where would you teach dance at? I have two choices, she replied. There's Dance Stream and Miss T's dance studios. This studio. Where are they at? He asked curiously, having a hard time placing where those two studios were located. Miss T's is on Main Street in Bayhaven, she replied. Dance Stream is a half-hour away from here in the next town over. Do you think you're willing to drive to another town to teach at Dance Stream after working at Maddie's? She thought it for a bit. No, I guess that leaves me with Miss T's. Is that a good thing? It is in some areas, she replied, a bit glumly. It gives me a chance to teach dance again. That's the important one. What's the downside? I'm starting all over again, she said glumly. I should have been known by now. No. I should have known. I don't know why I have that there. Should be. I should have known by now as being a great choreographer from dance competitions. That still doesn't sound right. Okay, skipping ahead. Miss T's doesn't have a dance competitive team. So basically, I was trying to convey in that paragraph that she should have known by now, from when she used to be in competitions, that Mrs. T doesn't have a dance competition. Or a dance competitive team, I should say. Again, not the best talker in the world. And apparently that filters into my writing. Okay. Dance Stream does? Yep, she replied. It's a great troupe for a small town dance studio. You've seen them before? Yeah, when I used to compete. Do you miss competing? No, my competing days are long over. How long did you compete? From the time I was 10 until I was 18. You miss dancing, though, he guessed. Yeah, I definitely miss performing, she agreed. However, I'm trying to step out from being a performer and become a full-fledged choreographer. It's hard, though. The stage calls to me. Have you done anything with dancing since the crash? He inquired cautiously, knowing that anything related to the crash was a touchy subject for her. She looked at him with sorrow in her eyes. After I completed physical therapy, I began to stretch a lot, she replied somberly. I figured it would help me with my flexibility. She gave him a small smile. I'm happy to report that I got most of my flexibility back. After 6 months, about 6 months after I was done with physical therapy, I shocked the hell out of my physical therapist by doing a heel stretch. He raised an eyebrow. What's a heel stretch? It's when you take hold of your heel and extend your leg out to the side, she explained. You can also do the same by extending your leg out to the front. I'll show you sometime. He smiled. I look very forward to seeing that. She chuckled. Anyway, I haven't done much with taking dance lessons. I figured I've done enough training. I got basic training in tap, jazz, and ballet by the time I was 9. I got a Dance Achievement Award for that. However, I have choreographed a few of my own dance routines, she continued. I figured I can show my employer what I'm capable of. Sounds great. Her mom arrived with her soup at that point. Here you go, Pumpkin. Thanks, Mom. Lucian, are you sure you don't want anything else? No thanks, he replied. I'm fine. Okay, let me know if you change your mind, she said as she walked away. Genevieve began to eat her soup. How's the soup? It's good, she replied after she swallowed a mouthful of soup. Do you want to try some? No thanks, my dear. Genevieve noticed that he hadn't touched his coffee. Don't you like it? She inquired. It's still too hot for me. Oh, okay. She ate the rest of the soup in silence while he watched. She thought it would be weird if he watched her while she thought it would be weird if he watched her while she ate. For some odd reason there. He ate rather than she ate. Instead, she felt at ease. She ordered a soy caramel chai when she had finished eating. What are you two going to do now? Her mother asked when she handed Genevieve her drink. We're going to head back to Bay Haven, she replied. Okay, drive carefully, Marlon told them as she gave Genevieve a hug. Nice meeting you, Lucian, she said as she shook his hand. The pleasure was mine, he said in his black velvet voice, which made both women swoon. They drove back to Bay Haven in silence while Genevieve sipped at her chai. Lucian parked the car in Genevieve's driveway and killed the engine. He leaned back into the driver's seat. It was nice to meet your mother. I hope it wasn't too soon. I don't think it was, he remarked. Then again, I don't know how long the ideal time is for someone to meet their parents of someone they're courting. I also knew my wife's parents before I started courting her. She chuckled. I like how you call it courting instead of dating. He raised an eyebrow at her. I'm old-fashioned at times. Me too. He smiled. He put his arm around her and leaned towards her. She closed her eyes as his lips met hers. She kissed him back. He wrapped his arms around her in a firm, gentle embrace as his kisses got deeper. She began to match his intensity by returning his kisses with just as much passion as his, caressing his cheek. She pulled away from him to catch her breath. As she tried to catch her breath, he ran kisses up and down her neck. It was very pleasurable. Do you want to come in for a drink? She asked him curiously. A chill ran down her spine when he looked at her with hunger. Sure, he said with a smile. What would you like to drink? She asked him after they got into the house. She was in the kitchen making herself a cup of tea. Do you have any red wine? She raised an eyebrow. That had been the second time he asked for that. Yes, I do. Then I'll have a glass of red wine. She went downstairs into the basement since that's where she kept the wine. She debated with herself whether to have some white or rose wine. She decided to have some rose wine instead before she had some tea. She poured the wine, set the glasses on a small round tray, and carried them out to the living room where he was. So sophisticated, he remarked as she set the tray down in front of him. Not really, she disagreed as she sat down beside him. Pete recommended I practice using a tray at home. I had many accidents when I first started working for him. I'm surprised he didn't fire me. He doesn't fire someone over that, he remarked. Well, for the first 6 months, that is. Ah, it's good to know I got better in 2 months, then. Good thing, he agreed, while he watched her take a sip of wine. Pete usually only fires people over if they are late constantly, they slack off on the job, they are disrespectful, or they do something extreme like steal. Or all of the above. Exactly, he agreed. Luckily for me, I don't do any of those things, she remarked. Me neither. She smiled at him. I can't believe I've been here for 6 months and didn't know you lived here. I feel the same way about you, he said softly as he smiled at her. The intensity of his gaze into her eyes made her look away. How's the wine? It's good, he replied as he continued to gaze in her eyes. How's your wine? Pretty good. You don't like to drink red wine? Not really. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Too dry, he smiled. You like it sweet? Yep. I can understand that, he remarked casually. You're a sweet lass. She blushed. Up to a point. I don't think so, he disagreed. If you weren't a sweet girl, I don't think a cop would ever have married you. That doesn't count, she countered lightly. Chris knew me since I was in diapers. He knew about my temperament before we dated. I can't see you being temperamental. Trust me, I can be, she said sweetly, though her eyes narrowed at him in warning. He chuckled. Sorry, my dear, he said as he tickled her beneath her chin. You can't intimidate me at all. She frowned. Why? You look like a pissed-off kid, he replied as he caressed the side of her cheek. It must be that baby face of yours, she grimaced. People don't take me seriously, though, unless I say something that freaks them out. Like what? When I was 7, I had a dream a couple months after my uncle died, she explained. I saw the store called Ernie's burn down. I didn't think much about it at the time because I chalked it up to my fear of fire and burned buildings. He raised an eyebrow. Burn buildings? Yeah, it's an unusual fear, she remarked dryly. My uncle was killed in a fire. He died from smoke inhalation, but he had burned. That's dreadful. Tell me about it. So tell me about this dream you had. There was smoke coming from the attic of Ernie's, she continued. I went up to the attic to see what was causing the fire. I saw a group of wires that were glowing orange. I got down from the attic to tell someone, and that's when I woke up. Did you tell anyone about your dream? Yeah, I told my parents. What did they say? Like me, they chalked it up to my fear, she replied. I didn't think anything of it until a year later when Ernie's actually burned to the ground. What freaked me out the most was that the fire had been caused by faulty wiring. What did your parents think when that happened? They couldn't believe it. Do you get premonitions often? No, thank God. You don't like having them? No, it's unnerving when it happens. Did you have one about the crash? There was a brief silence. Then she replied glumly. Yeah. Was it as detailed as when you envisioned that store burning down? Not really, she replied dryly. All I saw was a plane falling out of the sky and crashing into the water. I didn't see what airline the plane belonged to. I didn't know what type of aircraft it was, like if it was a Boeing 373 or a McDonnell Douglas DC-10. I didn't see what caused the plane to fall out of the sky. When did you have the premonitions about the crash? She frowned. 2 days before the crash. Did you tell anyone about it? Told my husband and my parents. What did they think? Nothing originally, she replied. I told them I probably daydreamed about it since I had already been nervous about flying. I hadn't flown since I was about 12. Besides, realistically, any plane could fall out of the sky. What did they think after the crash? Well, I couldn't get my husband's opinion because he was, dead, she said darkly. My parents were shocked once again that I had a premonition that came true, even though it didn't provide me with many details. What caused the crash? Bird strike, she replied. The plane had flown into a flock of Canadian geese and it caused distress to both engines. How did your husband and daughter die? He asked hesitantly. My husband died on impact, she replied sadly. My daughter died from drowning. She gulped down the wine like a shot. I'm going to pound myself some more. Do you want any more wine? Yes, please, my dear. She decided to leave the glasses in the living room and bring the bottles into the dining room. She felt horrible now talking about the crash. I'm going to take a quick break just to get a drinky. This is a long chapter. Very long. She didn't blame Lucian for his curiosity. Humans are curious by nature. However, she was hoping that the subject would change soon. Otherwise, she would have a killer hangover the next day from drowning the bottle of wine to drown the pain of the crash. Lucian had only drunk half of his wine, so she just topped it off. She poured herself another glass. She sat down next to him again and sipped out her wine. She felt his eyes on her. "Are you okay?" he asked her curiously. His eyes filled with worry. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" she replied casually, even though her voice shook with emotion. "I just figured talking about the crash is upsetting you." "Oh, no," she replied. "I'm used to talking about it. I mean, who doesn't want to know the details of how I lost my husband and daughter?" "We can talk about something else," he said, brushing her cheek tenderly. "I'm sorry for bringing it up." "It's okay," she said softly before chugging the whole glass of wine down. His eyes narrowed at her. "No, it's not," he said firmly, as he gently took the wine glass from her hand. He set the wine glass on the table before he put his arm around her and drew her to him. "You're upset. You're trembling with emotion." "I shouldn't be here," she told him after a moment of silence as a tear rolled down her cheek. He brushed the tear off her cheek. "Why do you say that?" "What's so special about me?" she challenged him. "What's so special about a former secretary that taught dance at night? I mean, my husband did more for society than I ever did, and he didn't make it." "Survival isn't about who is more special.